I often felt like embarrassed when people asked me like what I was, because there was like a lot of African Americans and a lot of Latinx kids, and there were some white kids too, but there was never like a group where I could be like Asian American and kind of fit into one of those like groups, because there were no other like Asian Americans there. So I think moving up to middle school and high school and realizing that there were more, I was just excited because I could finally like share my food with them, and then we could like kind of relate to each other on different aspects of like growing up or different cultural aspects, or we could share like stories that we had in common.
Thanks so much for interviewing with us, Gabby. Can you tell us where you were born and what that place was like growing up in?
Yeah. So I was born in Austin, Texas, and we lived on the east side of Austin. I lived north for like the first 3 months of my life, but I don't particularly remember those months very well. But living on the east side, like growing up, it was primarily like Latinx or African-American folks. And even going to school, that was like primarily like the people I was exposed to growing up, which I think was really cool because I got to learn about like their different cultures in school, because they would like, we would all get to talk about it on different discussion days. But one thing that I think all of my siblings talk about often when we're asked like about the community growing up was there was less exposure to like Asian Americans and our culture. So it was interesting going to middle school and high school where there was like more diversity, and growing up there and like finally realizing like, oh, we're not like the only Asians in this like little bubble, like there are more of us. It's like a weird feeling where you just realize like, oh, there are like other like Asian Americans out here. We just weren't in a space that they were like prominent in. And it was cool too, because I think growing up without that exposure, I often felt like embarrassed when people asked me like what I was, because there was like a lot of African Americans and a lot of Latinx kids, and there were some white kids too, but there was never like a group where I could be like Asian American and kind of fit into one of those like groups, because there were no other like Asian Americans there. So I think moving up to middle school and high school and realizing that there were more, I was just excited because I could finally like share my food with them, and then we could like kind of relate to each other on different aspects of like growing up or different cultural aspects, or we could share like stories that we had in common. So that was really cool.
Tell me more about like how you relate to your Asian American culture experience.
I think like the key portion I think I relate to a lot is probably the food aspect. I think both just the good food that we can share at the table with like our family and friends is really fun, but also growing up with our grandparents, a key part of their way of showing us love was like feeding us until we were like maybe past full.
Yeah.
So I think in that way that was always something to look forward to and something I really related to. So when people asked me like what one of my favorite parts about being like Chinese is, I was like the food.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Chinese or dish that your grandparents gave you?
Well, when I was growing up, it was probably my grandma, my mama, would make crispy noodles, and she would have like all of this like just array of all these toppings we could put on. So like little shrimp or some peas or some green beans, and you could just kind of pick and choose what you wanted. But then when I was in 5th grade, I figured out I was gluten-free. So that was no longer like a thing I could eat. But I am always down for like a good bowl of fried rice.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, particularly your parents or just anywhere?
My dad makes really good fried rice.
Oh, what do you like about the fried rice your dad makes?
He got really into cooking over COVID, and he got this big, I don't know what it's called, but it's like a grill kind of. There's a specific name for it, but he got one, and I think just the way it grills the fried rice, there's like a specific like really good taste to it.
Wow.
I really like it. Yeah.
Oh, That's so cool.
Yeah.
You're like, Dad,
Yeah,
can you
yeah.
make some of that fried rice now?
Yeah, when we have like a lot of leftover fried rice, I'll be just like, Dad, can you make some fried rice for lunch tomorrow?
That's so cool. I love that. I love that. So that's where you find a lot of relating to your culture. Would you say you're close to your mom or your dad?
I'm pretty close to both of them. Yeah, when I come home from school, I always find them in their room and I give them like a very detailed, like I think too much detail sometimes, rundown of my day. And I think in that way, I feel like I can just tell them everything. I think we're pretty open books.
Do you have a favorite memory with your mom?
I do. There was one time, I can't remember why, but she came into my room while I was studying and she was like, hey, Gabs, like there's this essential oils like making like, I don't know, like a vent. And you can like make your own little keychain or something, like little felt hearts or something. And you can like put essential oils and you can kind of mix your own essential oils. And we ended up going that night and we went and it was like the most boring event ever.
Yes.
We were like all crammed into this room and they were going on and on about like the science of essential oils. And me and my mom were just like, we're here to make them. Like, we're not here to learn about the background and stuff. We're here to make things. So she ended up just turning to me and be like, do you want to like go somewhere else and like leave? So then we ended up sneaking out the back. And we had both cleared off our nights for that night because we were like, well, we're going to this event. It's going to be a while. So she's like, okay, what should we do with our time? And we ended up, there was a playground like a few minutes away. It was like a trail. It was kind of just an open field. And it had, I know they're kind of popular on more modern like playgrounds, but they're these kind of hills and they're like covered in fake grass. And then there's like tunnels through them. And I just was like, okay, I'm going to crawl through that really quick. But I didn't expect her to follow me behind. So I crawled through the tunnel and then suddenly I hear her voice like shouting at me through the tunnel. And I pulled out my phone. So on my phone somewhere, I have a video of her crawling out of the tunnel with like all of her bags and she's just giggling. So cute. And then, yeah. And then we're like, should we grab something to eat? Because like, you can go grab like dessert or something. And we're like, okay, let's do ice cream. And then she remembered that there's this, I think it's dairy-free milkshakes. And we had gone before with my dad because he's dairy-free. And I was like, I could go for one of those right now. And we drove, while we were driving there, it just started storming. Like, it was just like full-on thunderstorms. And it was like really different from the weather that was like 5 minutes ago when we were crawling through tunnels.
Yeah.
And we ended up, by the time we pulled into the parking lot, it was like flooded. Like if you step out the car, like I think some of the water like went above her feet. And she's like, well, we ready? Like, I'll go order them. Like, I don't want you to step out in the water. So she was wearing like flip-flops and she like ran through the rain to go get us milkshakes. And then she came back and she was just like soaked. And I have like this picture of her where she's like cheersing my milkshake. But I think that was one I look back on a lot.
That's such a great story. What would you say is your mom's like love language? How does she show her love to you?
I think for me specifically, because I think she shows her love differently for each family member, depending kind of on what they receive. So like my little sister, she really loves hugs and she's very physically affectionate. So my mom will always like make sure to hug her every day and just like cuddle her sometimes on the couch if she's having a bad day. And I think for me, I'm not as physically affectionate. So we spend, my love language is more like quality time or words of affirmation. So a lot of the times she'll plan little things for us to do, or she'll just be like, hey, I know you have a lot of work, but do you want to go on like a study date or something? And take me like somewhere outside the house. So at least we can like hang out while I'm doing work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's so considerate.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Is there anything that you want your mom to know more about you?
I feel like I'm a pretty open book. Like if something happens, like her and my dad are like the first people to know. Like when I get home from school, like I'll sit at the dinner table and I'll just give like a full rundown of my day. I'll be like, first period, I did this. During passing period, I walked with these friends.
Yeah.
So I feel like they know me pretty well and I feel like they know everything that's going on in my life.
Do you feel like your parents show up for you in the way that you need in those moments where you're like, oh, I have some friend drama or I got some going on. Yeah.
I think they do. It took us a while to figure out how to like approach each other in different situations because I have an older brother and a younger sister, and each of us likes to be approached differently. So I think because we have a lot of conversations around this actually, when we were talking about how it took a while to realize that each kid needs to be approached differently because like Zachary, my older brother, he'll kind of go to his room and then he'll brush it off and then he'll be ready to talk and then they'll just approach him. But then for me, it takes like I have to be ready and then I will approach them kind of, or they'll come like in when they think it's been an appropriate amount of time.
Sure.
And I think again, like COVID helped us like learn how to approach each other better. And I think they do approach me like very well.
Do you feel like any kind of pressure from your parents to be a certain way or pursue a certain?
I think they've been very flexible with how each of us wants to go about our own thing and our own way of things. So I know like kind of the stereotypical Asian parent wants their kid to go into like STEM and be like a scientist and stuff. And obviously like if I tell my grandparents like, hey, I want to go into like fashion or film, they would be a little more iffy on it. But my parents have been like very like open to it. They like help me look at colleges and figure out like what I want to do. Like if I told them I wanted to do something with fashion or film, and they kind of helped me figure out colleges that would work for that because I'm starting like my college application process. But then at the same time, since they've had so much more life experience than me, they know what's going to be better and they kind of advise me against like certain things, like maybe like have like a graphic. My dad the other day was like, maybe have like a graphic design, start with graphic design because I think if you realize you don't like fashion design, it'll lead you to more opportunities, whereas fashion design is more specific. So I think they give us flexibility, but they still advise us based on their own experience.
What do you hope for your mom?
I have like two main ones that come to mind like right away. And I think one is that like, because she gives a lot in relationships, but I want like my hope for her is that like in all of her relationships, that is like reciprocated back to her. Like, because there's a lot of things she does for our family, and I always just hope that she gets all that love back because she does like so much for so many different people, and she's so supportive of so many people that I just hope that we can like pour that back in her bucket so that she like has enough to share for everyone. And then just like I love hearing about her job because she was a stay-at-home mom for like the majority of when all of us were in elementary. She was a stay-at-home mom, and then she was on the PTA at our elementary, and she would like substitute sometimes. But that was kind of it. And then when we got older, she got like this new job, and I just love hearing her talk about it because you can tell that she really likes it. And I just hope that like in the future her job keeps like making her happy, like she finds like fulfillment in her job, in her like career.
What cultural aspects from my grandparents or parents that I want to keep carrying on?
Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, I think like one aspect would be because I relate a lot to food, and food has always been very associated with like showing love in my family. And even with like my mom and dad, they both have dishes that like I associate with them. And when I'm like craving something, I'll be like, hey mom, can you make like this dish? Or hey dad, can you make this dish? So I feel like in that way I would want to pass down like both like all my favorite meals that I've grown up with that both my grandparents and my parents have made me, but also just like finding a dish that maybe I really like to cook or I really like to eat and kind of passing that down. Kind of like if like my kids or something were having a bad day or something, they would have like a dish in mind that they would like, that would kind of comfort them.